All you need to understand the market today in a nutshell. This is Market Today by N3WS.
Buckle up, because we are diving straight into a story that's sending shockwaves through Silicon Valley. The U.S. government is seriously considering, get this, breaking up Google.
Yeah, no, you're not imagining things. This is a really big deal.
Yeah.
This isn't like some fines or slaps on the wrist. We are talking about potentially dismantling one of the most influential companies in the world.
I mean, I use Google for everything: search, email, browsing with Chrome. It's everywhere. What exactly has them in such hot water with the government?
Well, it really boils down to their dominance in online search. The Department of Justice is arguing that Google holds the monopoly, basically controlling how most of us access information online. And that kind of power, it raises some red flags.
Okay, so what's the plan? What would a Google breakup even look like?
Well, the DOJ is proposing some pretty drastic measures.
Yeah.
They're talking about potentially forcing Google to sell off key parts of its business. Imagine a world where Google doesn't own Chrome anymore, or where parts of the Android operating system are, up for grabs. That's the kind of shakeup we're talking about.
Wow, I hadn't considered the impact on things like Android and Chrome. What does that mean for, the average person who relies on Google products every day?
Yeah, and that's a valid question, and a lot of people are asking it. This case could take years to play out, but just the fact that it's even on the table, it's a sign of how seriously governments are starting to take the influence of big tech.
For sure.
And this has implications for everything: innovation, consumer privacy, even just how we experience the internet on a daily basis.
It's a lot to process. While we're talking about major shakeups, let's shift gears to something a little more tangible. Cars, specifically Honda. They're issuing a massive recall. We're talking 1.7 million vehicles in the U.S. alone.
And when you hear the reason behind it, you'll understand why this is making headlines. The issue involves a potentially defective steering gearbox, which could lead to drivers losing control of the steering wheel.
Yeah, that's definitely not something you want happening at 60 miles an hour.
Exactly. This isn't like a minor glitch. This is a serious safety concern. And the recall covers some of Honda's most popular models: Civics, HR-Vs, CR-Vs. Even some 2023 models are on the list.
Wow, my brother actually drives a Civic. I'm texting him right after this to make sure he checks his car. For anyone else listening who might be wondering if their Honda is affected, we'll be sure to include information on where to check in the show notes.
Definitely a good idea to check. Recalls happen, but this one stands out because of its size and the potential risk involved.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder to stay informed about your vehicle and any, potential safety concerns.
Absolutely. Speaking of staying informed, let's move from the open road to the world of economics, specifically the Federal Reserve, because things are rarely dull over there. That interest rate cut we talked about. Turns out not everyone at the Fed was throwing a party about it.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't exactly a unanimous decision. The minutes from their September meeting were released recently, and they reveal some interesting disagreements behind closed doors.
Ooh. Spill the tea. What kind of disagreements are we talking about?
Well, you had some officials who were fully on board with the rate cut, but then, others were pushing for an even larger cut, talking about bold, and then you had those who were worried about, the potential for inflation if they went too far. Imagine a family trying to decide on a vacation destination. Everyone's got an opinion, and tensions run high.
That's a perfect analogy. So what's the takeaway for those of us who aren't, econ experts? What does this internal debate mean for the average person?
It basically means that predicting future interest rate decisions might be trickier than we thought. There's clearly a lot of back and forth happening at the Fed, and that uncertainty can have, ripple effects throughout the economy.
It's wild to think about how much goes on behind the scenes that we never even hear about. Speaking of things we don't always see coming, let's talk about General Motors. They're shaking things up in the electric vehicle market, and it has everyone talking.
They really are. You might have heard that GM is ditching the Ultium brand name for their electric vehicles. On the surface, it might seem like, a small tweak, but it actually points to a much bigger shift in their strategy.
Okay, so less about the name, more about the strategy. Break it down for us. What are they thinking?
Basically, it looks like GM is moving away from marketing the technology as a separate revolutionary thing. Instead, they're integrating electric vehicles seamlessly into their existing brands. Think Chevy, Buick, Cadillac, making it just another option for consumers.
So it's less look at our revolutionary electric cars and more, hey, we make great cars, and some of them happen to be electric.
Exactly. And I think this signals a broader trend we're seeing as electric vehicles become more mainstream. It's not about the novelty anymore. It's about making electric just another part of a brand's identity.
That's a really interesting point. It'll be fascinating to see if other car makers follow suit. But on a totally different note, healthcare. Specifically, CVS and UnitedHealth are in a bit of a battle with the Federal Trade Commission, and it could have major consequences for all of us.
This case has been making waves, and for good reason. Essentially, CVS and UnitedHealth are requesting that the FTC chair, Lina, be removed from the lawsuit against them. They're claiming she's shown bias against their pharmacy benefit manager practices, which, by the way, play a huge role in how much we pay for our medications.
Wait, back up a second. Pharmacy benefit managers, those sound important, but I'll be honest, I have no idea what they do.
They're kind of the middlemen of the pharmaceutical world. They negotiate drug prices with manufacturers and health plans, and their decisions impact which drugs are covered by insurance and how much you'll pay out of pocket.
Okay, so pretty important then. And CVS and UnitedHealth are saying the FTC chair already has it out for them.
That's their argument, yeah. And they want her off the case. They're saying she's already made up her mind, which they believe is unfair. But this case is far from over, and it will have major ripple effects on healthcare costs and access to medication for everyone.
For sure.
We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on how it unfolds.
Please do, because I have a feeling this is just the beginning. Now, from healthcare giants, let's talk about a different kind of giant, the Federal Reserve. Because remember those internal disagreements we were talking about earlier? Well, it seems those disagreements are starting to, make themselves felt in the markets a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
That recent interest rate cut, turns out it's not as clear-cut as everyone thought.
Exactly. And especially, remember how we were talking about how some officials wanted a bigger cut and others were worried about inflation?
Right.
That kind of that push and pull, that tug of war is making investors a little nervous,
Yeah.
It's like trying to steer a ship when the crew can't agree on which way to turn the wheel.
And nobody wants to end up shipwrecked in a volatile market. So what should we be watching for? Any clues about where the Fed might go next with interest rates?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
I would say keep an eye on economic data, inflation numbers, job reports, things like that. If things start heating up too fast, the Fed might tap the brakes with another rate hike.
Yeah.
But if the economy starts looking a little wobbly, they might, hold off for a bit.
Okay, so watch that data.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It's all about finding that balance. This conversation, it really got me thinking, from big tech facing all the scrutiny to car recalls, making headlines left and right, to the Fed, keeping everyone on their toes. It feels like we're living in a time where everything's changing faster than ever,
You hit the nail on the head. And it's not just about the pace of change, but the scale of it too, right?
Right.
Like the decisions these companies and these institutions are making, they have these ripple effects, and they touch every aspect of our lives, whether we realize it or not.
It's true. And to think we've only just scratched the surface today. We've gone from potential Google breakups to Honda recalls to deciphering the Fed's every move. And then we dove into GM's electric strategy shift and even that battle brewing over healthcare costs.
It's a lot to take in, for sure. But that's the world we live in now, right? It's interconnected. It's constantly evolving. And like you said earlier, knowledge is power. The more informed we are about, all these forces that are shaping our world, the better equipped we are to actually navigate them.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope we've given you, at least a few things to think about and maybe even some conversation starters for your next dinner party.
Yeah. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. We'd love to hear your thoughts on which of these stories you think will have the biggest, long-term impact. So find us on social media. We're at The Deep Dive Pod.
Until next time, stay curious out there.